Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're making a cowl neck vest. Both chic and modern, this stylish make combines all the things I love for a simple project that feels fancy. Speaking of, if you're looking for your next fancy make, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of the snazziest crochet tutorials and patterns that aren't too fussy, with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 225 grams of yarn. That's 395 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us what's more fun to explore, city streets or natural trails. This one's really hard, so I'm going to have to go 50-50 on this one. I love both. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making an even number chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to our waist. Now I need roughly 6 inches or 15 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 24. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to get started on our first row. It is going to be our first moss stitch row, so start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain doesn't count as a stitch. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain, and that second chain is going to count as a chain. Then what we're all going to do from here is single crochet into the 4th chain from our hook. So here's 1, 2, 3 is the one that we blocked off, and here's our 4th. Into that 4th chain, we are going to insert with 1 single crochet. Now that should have formed our first chain space and a single crochet, giving us the first 2 stitches of this row. From here, we're going to continue to chain 1, skip 1 chain, and single crochet into the next until we all have 2 chains left. We've just made our way all the way down with our first row, leaving the last 2 chains. Now, at the end of this first row in our 4-row repeat, we are going to end with an increase. So how we're going to do our increase is we're going to chain 1, so that's per usual so far. We are going to be skipping that second to last chain, and into that last, we're going to insert with a single, a half double, and a double crochet. So we're going to skip that second to last and into that last, starting with 1 single crochet, into that same last chain with a half double crochet, and same last chain with a double crochet. Now we should have 2 more stitches than chains that we made, and we're doing this type of increase at the end of this row just so that we don't get a curve when we're doing more of our increases. We want this to try and be as smooth as possible. Now the following row in our 4-row repeat is another moss stitch row, and we are going to be increasing into that row as well. So how we're going to get started on that is start by chaining 2. That first chain will count as our turning chain. That second chain will count as a chain. Then flip our work, and we're going to do our moss stitch all the way down. So what we're going to do is skip that first stitch. Into that next, this is going to be our increase. We're going to insert with 3 single crochets. So skip 1, into the second stitch, insert with 1, into that same stitch with 2, and same stitch with 3. Now so far for this row, we should have had our chain space. It might be a little small, but it will be there if you pull your stitches apart. Then our 3 single crochets. So far for this row, everyone should have 4 stitches. Then what we're going to do from here is continue on with the normal portion of our moss stitch row. So chain 1, skip one stitch and into the next, which should be our chain space, insert with a single crochet. Again, chain one, skip a stitch into that next stitch, which is our chain space, insert with a single crochet, and continue this to reach the end of the row. We have just completed our row 2. Now we should have 2 more stitches than our previous row. Our following row is going to be a single crochet row that ends on an increase as well. So all we're going to do from here is chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Into that first stitch, insert with 1, next stitch, which should be our chain space, with another, and continue this till we all have 1 stitch left. We've made our way down with our row 3. We should all have just 1 stitch left. Now we're going to do the same increase that we did for our row 1. Now, that last stitch at the end of our row 3 should be a chain space. What we're going to do is a single half double double all into that last chain space. So insert with 1 single, same last stitch with a half, same last stitch with a double crochet, and we should all have 2 more stitches than our previous row. Now, to finish off our 4-row repeat, it's going to be a back loop single crochet row. So what we're going to do from here is chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Flip our work, and we're going to start this row off with an increase and then 1 back loop single into every stitch. So the increase for our row 4 repeat is going to start with 1 back loop double, 1 back loop half, 1 back loop single all into that first stitch. So go ahead and insert with 1 back loop double crochet into that same first stitch with a back loop half double crochet, and into that same first stitch with a back loop single crochet. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop single crochet to reach the end of the row. We are back and our first 4 rows are complete. We should have 2 more stitches than our previous row. And from here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 4 previous rows until we now have a portion that can reach from mid-underarm that can align with the side of the base of our neck. Now I'm just going to get started on the following row with you, and then I'll let you do the rest on your own. So since we just did our first 4 rows in our 4-row repeat, the following row is going to be a moss stitch row. So we're all going to start with a chain 2. That chain 1, remember, doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. That second chain is going to count as a chain. Flip our work. Skip that first stitch and into the next, insert with a single, and just continue on with our normal moss stitch, closing off the row with the same increase that we did for row 1, and that's pretty much it. And I'll meet you back right after a repeat of row 4. Alright, we are back. My underarm portion is complete. Now I have a total of 16 rows. My width is roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to get started on the middle portion of our piece, which is just going to be our same 4-row repeat, but now with no increases and no decreases. So before we get started on the following row, I just wanted to let you guys know if yours is slanting just a little bit like how mine is, that's completely natural, that will happen, but it'll all even out once when it's seamed up and worn. But since we have all finished up right after a repeat of our row 4, our following row is going to be a mesh stitch row. So just to get that started together, we are going to chain 2. That first chain is our turning chain, second chain is a chain, and flip our work. Skip the first stitch, into the next stitch, insert with a single crochet. That should give us our first 2 stitches for this row, which is our chain space and our single crochet. Continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next until we reach the end of the row. So we are back and our first neckline row is complete. We made our way all the way down. We should have the same amount of stitches as our previous row. Now since this is the first neckline row, we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that row just so we know where the neckline starts and ends. Then our second row in our 4-row repeat is another moss stitch row. So we're going to chain 2, which I've already done, and flip. Per usual, that first chain is our turning chain. That second chain is our chain. We're going to skip that first stitch, which is a single crochet from our previous row, into the next, which is our chain space, with a single crochet, giving us our first 2 stitches for this row, which is a chain space and a single. Then continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next to reach the end of this row. Our second neckline row is complete. Again, no increases, no decreases, so we should have the same amount of stitches as our previous row. Then the following 2 rows in our 4-row repeat is going to be a single crochet row, just 1 single into every stitch. At the end of that row, chain 1, flip our work, 1 back loop single into every stitch again. Then I'll meet you back when we have the following 2 rows completed. Our first 4 rows for our neckline are complete. Now from here, what we're going to do is continue to repeat these 4 rows, again with no increases and no decreases, until we have a portion that can reach across our neck. Then once we have that completed, I'll meet you back right after a repeat of our row 4. Then we can finish up with our second underarm portion together. We are back. I have just completed the middle portion of my front panel. I now have a total of 32 rows. This width is roughly 7 inches or 18 centimeters. Now before we get started on the second underarm portion, we're all going to need to insert our stitch marker into the last row that we have, just so we know where the neckline starts and ends, and also into the 2 middle stitches that we have. Now, for those of you that have my numbers, counting from this first stitch marker side row, I counted in 8 rows and inserted my stitch marker into there, and did the same thing on the other side. Those are my 2 middle rows for my front panel. Now from here, we're going to do our underarm portion. So since we all should have ended right after a repeat of row 4, we're going to get started on our following moss stitch row. So chain 2, flip our work. Do our normal moss stitches, making our way all the way up, leaving the last 4 stitches. We've made our way down with our first moss stitch row, leaving the last 4 stitches. Now we're going to close off our row with a decrease of 4 double crochets. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to chain 1 and yarn over. Skip that following stitch and into that third to last, insert, pull through, second to last, pull through, and last, yarn over and pull through. We should all have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. So from here, yarn over, pull through 4, then yarn over, pull through 2. Then our first decrease row is complete. Now our following row is still a moss stitch row because we're still following our 4-row repeat, and that is going to start with a chain 2. First chain is our turning chain, second chain counts as a chain, and flip our work. We are going to skip that first stitch, which is the top of that decrease that we just did, then another decrease of 3 double crochets. So yarn over. Skip the top of that first stitch into that next stitch, which should be our chain space. We're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, yarn over, pull through 2. That should give us our first 2 stitches for this row, which is our chain space and the top of that double crochet. Then from here, continue to chain 1, skip a stitch and into the next stitch, which should be our chain space from our previous row, with a single crochet, and continue on with this to reach the end of the row. Our first 2 decrease rows for our underarm portion are complete. Now the third row in our 4-row repeat is a single crochet row. Chain 1, flip our work. Put 1 single crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 stitches. So we've just made our way down, leaving the last 1, 2, 3 stitches, remembering that that last stitch is that chain space on the other side of our decrease because it can very easily be overlooked. And what we're going to do from here is a decrease of 3 double crochets again. So yarn over, in that first stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, and next stitch, pull through. Yarn over, pull through 4, yarn over, pull through 2, and the last row is a back loop single crochet row, but it is going to start with a decrease of 3 double crochets, so chain 2 and flip. Starting with the yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop now, insert, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 4, yarn over, pull through 2, then continue with 1 back loop single into every stitch. We are back and our first 4 decrease underarm rows are complete. From here, it's going to be a repeat of our 4 previous rows for the same amount of rows as our first underarm portion. Once we have that completed, I will meet you guys back so we can work straight into the back together from there. We are back and the entirety of my front panel is complete. Now I have a total of 11 inches or 28 centimeters unstretched. Now what we're going to do is continue our 4-row repeat from where we're at. So we all should have ended along the bottom. We're going to chain 2, flip our work, do 2 moss stitch rows, a single crochet row, and a back loop single crochet row. This portion is going to be the back, so no increases, no decreases until we have a portion that can wrap around our back and reach this first row that we have over here. And I'll meet y'all back right after an even number of rows. Alright, so we are back. We have just completed the entirety of our back panel. Now I have a total of 100 rows. This width is roughly 13 inches or 33 centimeters unstretched. Now what we're all going to do from here is fold our work in half to seam it together. Now taking a look at our piece, it's going to have a front and a back. The front is going to be the side that has these very distinct ridges like this. So what we're going to do is fold it in on itself so that the ridges are along the inside. Then insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch. Now that we've folded our work, we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then yarn over, pull through everything, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then just do a single crochet row working in through both the front and the back panel at the same time. Insert your hook into that first stitch into the front panel, then into that first stitch into the back panel, then single crochet. Again, next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, and single crochet. Continue doing this, making our way all the way up. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that everything is all seamed up, we're ready to single crochet across the top of our front panel. So making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, meaning the seam that we just completed is along the inside. We're going to insert our hook into the top corner side row that our stitch marker's in, then working our way across the top, 1 single crochet into every side row, making sure we're inserting our 2 middle stitch markers. So my hook is into this top corner stitch. I'm going to pull my working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Starting with that same side row that our chain is in, we're going to insert with 1 single crochet. Now this is my next side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with another single crochet. Again, this is my next side row, so find that top loop and insert with a single crochet. Continue single crocheting all the way across until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch on the other side, making sure we're inserting our 2 middle stitch markers. I'll meet you back once we reach this corner. We are back. We have just completed single crocheting across the top of our front panel. Now from here, we're going to make a chain that can wrap around our head and reach this top corner stitch on this side. But the total amount of stitches that we're going to need to make, so that includes the single crochet row and the chains that we're about to do, must be in multiples of 4. So I went ahead and already measured mine out. So from where I'm at, I had a total of 72 stitches, that is including my single crochets and my chain that I made, or I just made a chain of 56 because I had a total of 16 stitches here. Now the total length of my chain is roughly 13 inches or 33 centimeters. That does wrap around my head. And now what we're going to do from here is slip stitch it into this top corner stitch into the front panel. So making sure that my chain isn't twisted, I'm going to slip stitch into this top corner stitch and pull through. That slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then from here, chain 1 and working in the same direction as our previous row, 1 single crochet into every stitch, making sure we are still inserting our 2 middle stitch marker stitches, and 1 single crochet into every chain, making our way around. Once we have the single crochet row completed, try our piece on just to make sure everything is still fitting nicely, because this is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. If it's a little bit too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, you do some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I'll meet you back to get started on the length. So we are back. I have just completed my single crochet row, and I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. Now we can get started on the length of the cowl neck detail. Now, before we get started on that, we're going to want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch markers into some places. So taking the total amount of stitches that we have for that single crochet row, we're going to divide that by 4, because remember it needed to be divisible by 4. Then counting from our 2 middle stitch markers, just insert your stitch markers into that sum that we got. So as an example, I had a total of 72 stitches, divided that by 4, that was 18. So from one of my middle stitch marker stitches, I counted at 18, insert my stitch marker, did the same thing after that, again and again. We should all have the same amount of stitches in between each of our stitch markers, and now from here we can get started on the height. Now what we're all going to want to do is insert our 5mm hook into our stitch marker stitch that's working towards the back, because we're going to work into the back panel first. So I went ahead and already measured mine out, how long I needed my cowl neck to be, keeping in mind that we are going to fold it in half. I needed roughly 5 inches or 13 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 25. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do a half double crochet row back down. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then starting with the yarn over, we're going to insert into that third chain from our hook. So here's 1, 2, 3, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, and continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. So now that we've put 1 half double crochet into every chain, we're now going to slip stitch it into the base. So making sure that we're working towards the back panel first, we're going to find that next available stitch and insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work And from here, put one back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So yarn over into that first stitch from our previous row, not into any of those slip stitches into the base. Insert into that back loop with a half double and continue with one back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Then to complete our falling row together, chain 2 at the end of this row, flip our work, put one back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We are back and we're now at the end of our row 3. Now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we just did. So just inserting our hook into that next available stitch, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through everything, then to work our way into the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch, doesn't count as a stitch, flip our work and repeat. We are back. Now what we're going to do from here is continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, working our way all the way across our back. So we are going to be working past those 2 middle stitch marker stitches within the back until we reach our following stitch marker stitch, and then I'll meet you back to do the front of our cowl together. We are back and we have just completed the back portion of our cowl neck detail. Now from where we're at, we're all going to do increases into every other row until we reach our middle stitch marker stitch. So how that's going to work is, if you guys end along the outer edge like me, we're going to chain 2 and flip. But for those of you that ended along the base, you guys are going to get started on your following row. So slip stitch into the base the same way that we normally would, putting one back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then at the end of that row, chain 2, flip, then we'll all meet back together. So now that everyone is at their outer edge, we're going to start this row off with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles. So yarn over into that first stitch's back loop with 1, same first stitch's back loop with a second. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Now connect this row into the base the same way that we normally would, work your way up to the following row the same way, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of that row. We are back. We have just completed our first increase row and then also made our way back out. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we're worked into our middle stitch marker stitch, and then I'll meet you back to do the other side of our front panel. We are back at our middle stitch marker stitch. Now we're going to decrease this side. Now if you're along the base, work your way back out, then chain 2 and flip. And for those of us that are already at the edge, we are all going to chain 2 and flip, and then we can all do our decrease together from there. So to get started on our decrease, we did a chain 2. What we're going to do is yarn over into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, second stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, then 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of the stitches. Connect this row into the base the same way that we did this entire time, then work your way up to the next row. Flip your work and put 1 back loop half into every stitch, making our way back out. Then continue to repeat these 2 rows until we don't have any more stitches left. And when we don't, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all up together. We are back. We've made our way all the way down with the rest of our cowl neck detail. Now we're going to seam it up. Now this seam is going to be the same seam that we did for the side, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it because I went ahead and already seamed mine up. What you guys are going to want to do is flip your work wrong side out. Insert your hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, then do our same single crochet seam all the way down. Then once we have that completed, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then we can fold it inwards and the seam will be on the inside. Once we have our cowl neck completed, we can now get started on the bottom band. So start by inserting your hook into any one of the side rows we have along the bottom and put 1 single crochet into every side row. We're going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And finding our first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet into my next side row, into that top loop, insert with a single. Continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. And just as a really quick tip, the single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try your piece on, making sure everything still fits. If it's a little bit too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. We are back. Our single crochet row is complete. Now from here, we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the bottom band to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 10. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert your hook into that chain that we blocked off, insert, yarn over, and gently pull through both loops on our hook. So pull through 1, pull through the second. Once more into that following chain, insert,
yarn over, and gently pull through both. Now we want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. But from here, continue with one slip stitch into every chain. Now that we've put one slip stitch into every chain, we're going to connect it into the base. So into that next available stitch into the base, we're just going to insert with a slip stitch. That doesn't count as a stitch. Then we're going to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, we're all going to chain one, flip our work, and put one back loop slip into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3.
We are back and our first 3 rows are completed. Now from here, we're going to connect it into the base. So just like our previous row, insert your hook into that next stitch into the base to connect, then to work our way up to the next row, slip stitch in that next stitch, flip our work, and then one back loop slip stitch into the rest of our stitches. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, making our way all the way around. Then I'll meet you guys back so we can seam it all together. We are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch row. Now we're going to seam it together. Now this seam is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam so that it looks like another back loop slip stitch row. So what we're going to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then yarn over and pull through. Then start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, only into that back loop. Then yarn over and pull through all 3. Once more, next stitch into the front panel, only into the front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, only into that back loop. Then yarn over, pull through all 3. And continue this till we don't have any more stitches left. Then do a chain up 1 and cut. We are back. We have just completed our bottom band. Now we're going to single crochet along the entirety of the back of our piece just to clean it up. And what we're going to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the back. Now working into the back panel, 1 single crochet is going to be worked into every side row. Working our way up or down the side of the front panel, we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side row. So let's get that started. So from where I'm at, I'm going to pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and just make my way over until I reach my first side row within the front panel. We are back and I'm at my first side row within the front panel, so what we're going to do is put 2 single crochets into that side row. So just find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. There's 1 and then there's 2. Into my next side row, this is mine right here. Going to find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets again. So there's 1 and then there's 2, and that's pretty much it. We're just going to continue on with this, making our way all the way up. Then once we make our way all the way up, then we're going to be working underneath the collar portion, so just 1 single crochet into each of those stitches, then working our way back down our front panel, 2 single crochets into every side row, and if we still have some side rows within the top of the back, 1 single crochet into every side row as well. Once we have that, slip stitch into that chain space, and I'll meet you back. So we are back. Our single crochet row is complete. Now from here, we're going to do another slip stitch band, exactly the same way that we did the bottom band, making our way all the way up and around. Now, since we already know how to do the bottom band, I'm just going to talk you guys through it. So right after we have slip stitched into that chain space, what we're going to do is make a chain the length that we'd like for this band to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 5. Then just do our back loop slip stitch rows, making our way all the way up and around. Well, we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I'll meet you back to seam it together. We are back. We have just made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it. But this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as the bottom band. So just to talk you guys through it, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, then do the same outside loop slip stitch seam. When that is all completed, we are all done. The last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!